Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. There's something happening in modern relationships that most people feel but struggle to explain. You meet someone, you connect quickly, it feels intense, real, almost perfect, but sometimes what feels real isn't. Today's guest explores that space. Catherine Crestani is the author of My Virtual Obsession, a psychological novel that dives into loneliness, emotional attachment, and how modern connection is reshaping the way we experience intimacy. She explores why we attach so quickly, why we stay longer than we should, and how easily emotional intensity can be mistaken for real connection. Catherine, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that introduction. It was beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much for that. All right. So, Catherine, I believe, because you look like you're in your 20s, right? You look young. So, I believe you're in your 20s.
I'm nearly 40, so thank you. I will
Woo!
take that.
Oh my God, you look like you're 23. Okay, so yeah, now you have to take us back to your 20s, right? How did you view relationships and connections during that time?
You know what's so interesting? I actually got married incredibly young in my first marriage. And I was actually at a point, I grew up in a kind of strict household. Like I wasn't allowed to date really. So I would kind of do it behind my parents' back and, all these sorts of things because I was like this little black sheep rebellion. And I'm still a little bit of a rebel, but in a different way. And when it came down to the breakdown of my first marriage, it was really interesting because it was so many levels of grief and mourning because it was okay, well, when you marry somebody or when you're in a relationship with somebody, you don't ever imagine the end, right? You imagine the future, like, okay, maybe we'll get married, we'll have kids, we'll live together, we'll die together, whatever that looks like. And then when that doesn't happen, you go into this state of grief. And what I found doing a lot of work with my clients now is that a lot of us get attached to the fantasy of what could be instead of living in the reality of what is. And when I stepped out of that relationship, I was towards the end of my late 20s, and I was so happy, like, because I'd finally stepped out of this false version of myself who I'd become. I became someone who was constantly making sure everyone else was happy. I was making sure everyone else's needs were met. I was fixing everybody else. But I forgot about myself in the equation. I always put myself last. And when you're building a relationship with other people and you constantly put yourself last, that is not a fair relationship. A relationship is give and take. It's not give, 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 give. And as now stepping into the work that I do with others, I actually have to be careful I don't give, 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 give as well, because I am a natural giver. And at the same time, we often forget to ask to receive support or to receive help. So then, this whole concept of loneliness kept coming up, which subconsciously I didn't realize was playing out because we try and avoid loneliness because then we have to get to know ourselves at a deeper level, right? When we're alone, it's when our thoughts start to play out. It's when our insecurities start to come out. And instead of getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, we tend to run away and throw ourselves into doom scrolling, or we throw ourselves into talking to people online or to putting our status and pretending that we're okay when we're really not. And this is where my book, My Virtual Obsession, ends up having this breakdown of actually, what do I really want in life? And where does that come through? And it was through my relationships, but also working with my clients that I can see, well, actually, sometimes we just get addicted to the fantasy of what could be because it's easier than facing the reality of what's in front of us.
Wow. Okay, so I feel like you've just mentioned everything that we young adults usually do, right? First of all, we most times, especially in relationships, we tend to put ourselves last, and then our partner's
Mm.
needs come first, which, eventually suppresses how we feel or our identity, right? So yeah, that's something we are struggling with as young adults. So if you were to like reflect on your younger self, what would you wish you understood earlier about emotional connection?
Hmm. I actually feel like I would tell her you need to love yourself more because so often I would put myself down and it's funny, I was on another interview before this and it was asking when did you realize you trigger people? I've triggered people my whole life because I never wanted the tiny conversations and I would shrink myself down to fit into the tiny conversations. When in reality, I'm like, no, I want to talk about the weather and I don't want to talk about, what I ate for dinner last night. Let's go talk about what our visions are and our dreams are and where we want to head and, how we can create an impact in this life and in the world, if you want to go even bigger. But at the same time, it's coming back to, you know, who do I want to be when I get to choose? Who do I choose to be? Because so often we just become who we have to be or who we think we should be, or who we think we need to be in the moment. And that was a lot of what I would do. The other part of me, if someone told me no, I would always want to prove them wrong, even though maybe sometimes it was okay to accept that maybe it is a no. But the little stubborn rebel in me was like, no, I'm going to prove you wrong and do it anyway. Sometimes that is great because I did prove them wrong on so many levels. But in the other aspect of it, it was
Mm.
like, what if I would have just accepted it as a no rather than trying to prove something else? And again, that comes back to loving myself because I always felt I had to prove myself. Whereas if I did believe that and just went with what I felt was right for me, my life would have looked very different. But at the same time, I wouldn't be here talking to you and having this conversation either.
Exactly. I'm happy you did actually. So, the goal here, right, is to always put yourself first and love yourself, right? When people say put yourself first, some people tend to misunderstand it for being selfish, right? But it's
Mm.
important to understand the difference. Putting yourself first is self-love, right? So it's actually important to understand the difference between being selfish and, putting yourself first. Right. So yeah,
Uh,
this brings me to
I had a,
okay.
I was going to say, I had a coach, and instead of calling it selfish, she called it self-full.
Oh,
So being self-full. And
exactly.
even self-love is an interesting concept because we've been so conditioned that self-love means to go get that massage or to go, by all means, if your body really needs a massage, go get a massage. But I like to call it instead self-commitment because if we don't commit to ourselves, then how do you actually honor yourself? Because, just going for a massage once every month or something like that is not enough to commit to yourself. What is that passion or that beautiful project you want to birth into this world? And how can you commit to that to yourself every day? Because it's what is honoring you.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much for that one, actually. And it brings me to what you're doing now. I want us to do a deep dive into what you're doing now. So, your book, right? My Virtual Obsession, it explores the bloodlines between real and perceived connection. So, what inspired you to write it?
A dream. And I'm not kidding. So the whole thing came in a dream. So I'm very lucky because I have a lot of spiritual gifts. So I'm very clairvoyant, which means I can see what people can't see. I hear things, in a package, I guess. Say I'm psychic if you want to wrap it up like that. But at the same time, so I got this very, very elaborate dream play out. But the interesting thing was a few years before that, a good friend of mine who is also my naturopath, he said to me, if you could do anything in the world, what would it be? And I didn't even stop myself. And I said, I want to write. I want to write stories. I want to write books. And so this book started as a dream. and I saw it as a movie. And I was like, I need to get this out. So it comes back to this self-commitment practice. So every day for 15 minutes, every day, I would write this story every day. Some days I would be more inspired and write more. Some days I wasn't feeling as creative, so I'd go back and check what I'd already written. But for every day for I think 3 or 4 months, I wrote 15 minutes a day. And at the end of that, I ended up with a 90,000 word novel. And I was like, oh my goodness, I wrote a book, you know? And then the practice of unpacking what that actually means came forward. So I had to go through a lot of initiation practice. So if you are ever someone that wants to start a podcast or write a book or whatever it is, you have to face some of your demons. You have to face some of the shadows that are in your life. Mine was my little self-saboteur. So even I went to go submit it to a publisher in its rawest form because I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do an edit and I'm just going to see what happens. And the day before I had to submit it, that the deadline I gave myself, all I had to do was write a synopsis. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, it's like a 200 to 300 summary of the book, right? And I absolutely shut down. I couldn't do it because I was running away from this part of myself, like, oh my gosh, what if they don't accept it? And it's like, but what if they don't accept it? And they didn't accept it. I'm not going to lie. So then I went, you know what? I need someone else to look at this. So then I went and my husband's like, hey, what about this friend? So I have this friend who's like attention to detail is amazing. And she actually ended up being more amazing than I could imagine because she did this full character development on the book. I was like, oh yeah. And then through this process, I ended up going, okay, well, it needs another edit. I need to cut out all the fluff because it's gotten a bit too waffly with me trying to put all these extra character layers in. So then I actually used AI to help me edit it. And when I say I used AI to help me edit it, it was a lot of work. You have to really push back, but I'm like, okay, let's do what's this. But then this beautiful book came together. And so it was this big process of like just, yes, it started as a dream, but at the same time, if you can honor and commit that dream, there is no better feeling than holding that book in your hands and going, oh my goodness, here it is. I did this. And I ended up self-publishing because that was the best way for me to get it out there. And now I'm going out and talking about it. And then evolved was like, oh my goodness, this ended up being bigger than what I thought it was when I started to unpack what I'd written. But that's the beauty of when you birth something. It's amazing comes from that.
Wow. Okay. So, I just learned a lot from just this short story you said, right? What I noticed is you have a very strong willpower, right? And you're consistent. The fact that it started with a dream, and then from a dream, it started, then it came up to, uh, should I use the word persistence, right? You actually decided, you know what, I've had the dream, I'm gonna write a book. Or let's say I'm gonna write. Then you actually started writing consistently. You said you devoted 15 minutes daily, right?
Yep.
Consistency.
Yep.
That's consistent.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
actually wrote the book. Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Look, here it is.
I'm excited
See?
about the book.
So,
All right.
but you bring up a really beautiful point, Joy, because if you don't commit to yourself, this is the whole self-commitment thing, but if you don't honor that, habits are really hard to establish. It takes at least 22 days to establish a habit, another
Mm,
220 days before it becomes part of your routine. And then another
mm,
220 days before it's actually just integrated. And if anyone's curious, there's a really beautiful book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Highly recommend it. But at the same time, this is when we go into these different aspects of ourselves. If we don't honor them and let it come through, we're shutting ourselves down. So, it might be that you have a dream to do something and oh, it's just too hard, but you haven't even tried. So if you try it and you someone said to me, you put the coat on, you wear it for a bit, and if it doesn't feel right, that's okay. At least you honored that and you took it back off. And I'm very big on teaching people on how to honor their inner authority, which is a fancy way of saying their intuition or their inner wisdom. And when it comes down to really honoring who you are underneath, if you keep wishing on your dreams or these ideas that you have or creative notions because it seems too hard or just seems too whimsical or whatever, you are shutting down a piece of yourself every single time. And this is when you get into dangerous territory and you start living a life that isn't you. And this is where loneliness can come and plague you, and you start accepting people in your life that aren't necessarily going to benefit you because it's easier to escape the reality of not facing yourself and honoring who you are than it is living in that fantasy.
Okay. All right. So talking about the themes of loneliness, right? I'm particularly interested in that. What do you think okay, let me put it this way. How does loneliness play a role in the way we form a relationship, especially in this digital age?
Because we think this is where we will put our intuitive nudges aside. So we all have those gut instincts, right? Like where we're like, oh, this feels good too good to be true. Sometimes it is too good to be true, so don't get me wrong. But at the same time, if you have this inkling that something's not right and you ignore it, you're ignoring yourself again. And sometimes we as humans, we want to naturally be connected. That's our wiring. Most of us are wired to want a connection. We want to be with somebody else. We want to be around other people. Don't get me wrong, like I get overwhelmed being around too many people too often, and I like having those loneliness. But the loneliness makes us uncomfortable because we have to face ourselves. And so this is where people can get sucked into these, and there's nothing wrong with online romances. I met my husband now online. I'm not going to lie. I met him through an app, and so and at the same time, it doesn't matter how you meet somebody. If you're meant to find them, you're meant to find them. I truly believe in that. But at the same time, if you choose to not do anything different or you choose to change in the same cycle, and if you're choosing a relationship to escape yourself, that is where the danger lies. Because that is where you're, instead of working on yourself, you're going to just keep putting yourself in situations and you can keep putting mask on after mask, but those masks don't last. And then, I've met people who are perpetually going from marriage to marriage to marriage because they don't face themselves. And then they'll always blame the other person rather than having a look at, like, why is this happening for me? Why am I stuck in these cycles? I've had clients who will continually not end the relationship and just hope the other person does. And I'm like, it's not going to step out of that cycle and you choose to end the relationship. And this is how the universe works, is that if you're meant to learn a lesson, you're going to keep putting into it. So what loneliness can make you do is be someone you're not, because it's easier to be this other person or just placate them or give, or fix something or however that shows up in your life, or be the nice girl, and you're the nice girl syndrome. It's my other favorite to work with people and teach them to say no. So how to step out of that cycle can be really, really tricky because it's like, oh, but I don't want to go to the movies by myself. If you're someone listening, if you've never gone to the movies by yourself, why not? You talk to somebody during the movies, you just go. I used to do it all the time, especially after I had my little human. My husband and I would take turns going to the movies. I'd go see the Disney ones he didn't want to watch, and then he'd go see the violent ones I didn't want to watch. So, you know, you have to be okay with yourself and you have to be okay loving who you are just as you are. And when you can do that, then loneliness doesn't matter. And then you typically attract that person that's looking just for you rather than these false identities that you're creating or perceiving to be. And, we're all guilty. Our ego kicks in, especially when you're behind a keyboard. You don't have to face the person. You like to embellish things, or like to hold things back. And this can be a danger for online. And there's nothing wrong with it. I believe if you're going to have a connection, you're going to have a connection. But at the same time, don't portray yourself as someone you're not, because then you're lying to yourself as much as to the other person.
Okay. I feel like I've learned so much already. And while you talk, it just has me thinking, right? In order for you, like you said, just be yourself. You don't have to portray yourself as someone else just so you keep your partner or something. But then it's important to know that being yourself means knowing yourself. Some people don't actually know what they want. They don't know themselves, right? So that's another issue for that's another conversation, right? So
That's a whole
yeah.
other podcast.
Exactly, right? So I think, like, this is to my listeners, right? In order for you to be yourself, you need to know yourself. You need to understand what you like, what you don't like, what you love, and what makes you happy. That way, navigating relationships is better that way. So yes, thank you so much for this
Yeah.
opportunity. I learned a lot, just so you know, right?
I was going to add on to what you just said, which is so beautiful because Dr. John Demartini talks about knowing your values because we all have values of what we find is important. But if you're with somebody that doesn't have the same values of you, your relationship's going to break down because you're constantly competing. Like if you value family and connection and they value work and play, then you're not going to have this same kind of level of connection that you need. But I encourage people to go check out his work as much as my own work, because this is the more you're curious and the more you want to go learn about yourself, whatever way that is, whether it's astrology, whether it's human design, whatever the latest flavor is, go learn about yourself because exactly like you said, if you don't know yourself, how do you present yourself in this world? How do you show up authentically? We don't want to be in this world where everyone's putting masks on and walking around as a shallow version of themselves. We want to show up and actually be our beautiful human selves because we're all unique. We all have our own unique gifts, our unique style, our unique stories. The next person next to you is no better than you or any less than you. We're all equal. So if you can embrace all aspects of you and see that that's a beautiful blessing, that is when you can truly shine and show up in this life.
Thank you so much for that beautiful one right there. I learned a lot, just so you know. And yes, finally, um, not finally, because something might just come up right now. But yeah, looking at the future, right? Or let's say now, what are you probably currently working on that excites you the most right now?
The moment the focus for this month is actually sharing this book, seeing how it evolves. And it's been really cool actually unpacking the messaging within it and sharing it in a very different way. It's been really beautiful. So at the moment, this really excites me. I love talking to people. I love connecting with people. And this is really exciting. And for me at the moment, I've actually I'm still doing writing, but I do it in an inspired way. So when I'm inspired, I sit there and I'll write different articles and I write for Brains magazine as well. So I have like all these beautiful writing outlets. And to me, that's still makes me happy, but at the same time, I love being curious and learning something new. Like even if I just sit there and paint a terrible painting, I'm not the best painter. I'm not good, but I like doing it. I like the process of mixing colors and putting these things onto things. Why not? Who cares? Like this is what I think. If you enjoy doing it, just do it.
Okay, well, so finally, right? Although I'm not sure. What do you think? Like, what message do you want your book to give to those who read it? What message do you want them to get from the book?
I feel that it's okay to know what you desire and to choose, and it's okay to be lonely too. And also, there's a little bit of a warning in there of how technology can take over your life and how when we sit on the back, let it like come back to ourselves and actually disconnect, it's when we can truly get to know who we are.
Okay. So thank you so much. This has been amazing. I I feel like I still have a whole lot of questions, right? But I'm just looking at the time. But if you're game, right, we could do another episode where we do like a deep dive into,
Yeah,
a whole lot of conversations.
let's do it. I can talk about so many different things. Let's do it.
Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you, Catherine. This has been amazing. And yes, it brings me to the final segment of my podcast. It's called the rapid fire segment.
Okay,
All right, so starting now, love or attachment?
love,
Okay, intensity or stability?
intensity,
Okay, chemistry or compatibility?
chemistry,
Right. What is one word for intimacy?
connection.
Wow. And finally, one relationship lesson everyone should learn early.
Love yourself first.
Love yourself. Okay. Love yourself. Thank you so much. And yeah, Catherine, where can listeners get to learn more about you and what you do?
Yeah, you can head over to my website, which is Willow Healing. So WILLOW, then healing.org, so ORG. I hang out on Instagram a lot. So my handle is Willow Healing and then SH at the end. You feel free to DM me, or I'm also on Substack, and you can check out my podcast as well, which is Willow Healing Matters, which is on all your favorite podcast players on YouTube and all those fun things. So definitely, and if you want to get my book, it's on every platform you can possibly get a book on. So feel free to download. And if you do love it, I would love to hear from you. Please, if you want to leave a review, you don't understand how much that helps authors. But at the same time, if you want to give feedback, feel free to email me. I'm always happy to have a conversation.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much, Catherine. This has been amazing. And yeah, to my listeners, thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, just as it did in me, make sure to share to someone who you think might need this, and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Thank you, Catherine. This has been amazing. And I'm going to put your links in the show notes so that it's easily accessible to audience.
Perfect. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Okay, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
All right.